Now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the charts, and you're going to see some really interesting things. I know we have a lot of people that are watching this now for the first time, seeing our member version of the short-term view, so I think you're going to find this very interesting. So we're going to start out, as we always do, looking at this daily chart of light crude and take a look at what our expectation was, and then our forecast for the week and all the momentum indicators. Here is light crude, and you could see our cycle analysis in there. And what we had expected was that we would get a small up week as we bounced off minor support. That is, well, pretty much exactly what we got in here, as we got this nice upward pop, and we got up close to that resistance area. What we had said was that the projection oscillator in all of them was oversold. So when I look over here at the projection oscillator, right there, you could see that we were looking at last week that we had gotten oversold in momentum right over here, and that was giving an indication, and so were the cyclical patterns, that we were going to get a bounce. And now you could see we've been bouncing around between negative and neutral momentum, as you can see right in here. And right now, the momentum in light crude is neutral. So we don't have a lot to say about the momentum as we go in there. In fact, in all of the energies, there are really no signals that we're looking at as far as the momentum signals go. Nothing particularly overbought or oversold. You could see that's light crude. Here is the momentum in gasoline, and you could see that has now turned positive right over here and has gotten just a little close to overbought, but not quite. So you could be getting a little roll over there. You could see heating oil also in positive momentum. So where you look back at light crude, you could see that wasn't able to get to positive yet. So you could see that light crude is actually weaker than the two products. Here is natural gas. Now, natural gas is negative. You could see the negative momentum in here, and I want you also see the projection oscillator is looking like it's overbought. Now, when you get overbought projection oscillators in the red zone, you usually get further declines. You could see that happen right over here and right over here. I want you to see that what we're looking at in natural gas right here, now we're looking at the cycle analysis on natural gas. This calls for about another week and a half or so on the downside before this corrective period is over with. So we're therefore looking for a down week in natural gas. Now here's the comparisons in here as we look at the very short-term indicators, and you could see that they all on an intraday basis had turned positive, and you got this upward momentum going right here on an intraday basis. As we compare, you could see even though you got some positive momentum in natural gas, it wasn't able to get very strong in there, and you could see relative comparing all four of the energies in here, natural gas is much weaker, and that's why we look for this period of it rolling over there for another week and a half. And here is natural gas in that red zone again, so you can see that looks like it's going to move to the downside. So maybe the best trade in here is natural gas. We're going to call light crude for the week a small change on the week. We think we're going to be stuck in the 45, 47 and a half range in light crude, which is in between those the support and resistance that I just showed you. Let's just go back right now so you could see that right in here in light crude. So you can see that area of support right around that slim ribbon that it's moving up through, maybe a little bit lower right in here. And then this area of resistance about 47, 47 and a half is where we think it's going to be stuck. So that is a look at the energies for the week. And we were really good on those this week. Take a look now as we switch over to the currencies. Now, I'm going to take a pretty extensive look here at the currencies, as we were expecting that the dollar was going to be weak, and that it was moving down towards a spot where we were going to be getting an upside reversal. and it moved down perfectly during the week, following the patterns very much as we had anticipated. And here is that dollar index right there. So you can see in our cyclical patterns in here, it's very divided up. You could see the big patterns. So this is the big ones right in here, right? And this is a beautiful cycle harmonic that you can see right in there, where you have this whole family 3 times right there and coming to an end. So this one came to the end here, you got a big rally. This one came to the end here, you got a crummy rally and set up this whole negative period right in here that is now bottoming. So we're looking for an upturn in the dollar. So last week we said that the dollar would be down 3-4 days and then turn up. Well, it actually went down through the end of the week. The upturn is just due in this coming week right here. So we're going to call it an up week for the dollar. Now I'm going to show you that all of the other currencies are between overbought and extreme overbought. And that is even going to enhance the fact that we think the dollar is going to bounce right there. You could see in here that the dollar is now getting oversold, and it's been in very, very negative momentum this whole time. So we've been negative on it, and you can see that it's been really negative right there. Getting oversold. It might take another couple of days in here. The market forecast is almost a buy signal right there. It's very close. I mean, we would have to call it a buy signal based on what we're seeing right there. So when we look at that, it really looks like we're going to get a pop in the dollar in the coming week. Keep that in mind as we start to look at gold next, and which we think is going to be pulling back. So here's that dollar index, which we think is going to be turning up. Now the euro currency trades opposite of it, of course, and you could see in here as you look at the euro that our projection was that it was going to get stuck here at these fib extensions and then start to roll over. So we thought it would be kind of an up week and then start to roll over. You could see that's happening, but now we're getting into a period where it should move down. Our target for this week is around 113.70 on the downside. It could get a little bit worse than that. When I look here at the daily momentum, you could see it's still strong, not overbought yet. So you might not get any kind of real big declines in there yet as the dollar tries to form a bottom in there. But when we look at some of these other currencies, now we were very bullish on the British pound. We had a long side setup in there, and look at this explosion in momentum on the upside. It is now overbought. You could see right there. But when it's overbought in the green, you only get some modest pullbacks. And you can see on our analysis in here, the cycle pattern suggests a pullback over this next week. So we're looking for the dollar to come up. We're looking for the British pound to come down for the next week. Take a look here at the Japanese yen also, as it's been moving up, and we think it's getting up into this resistance zone. So we think the Japanese yen is going to roll over also. Take a look at the Aussie. Now the Aussie has exploded. Now our option bias indicator, which is an extraordinarily high quality indicator, is giving this what we call N1 orange right there. It's signaling an extremely high overbought condition and very likely to reverse to the downside. So we're looking for a pullback there in the Aussie. So we have so many things that look like they're going to pull back. You can see that Aussie is extreme overbought also, as you see the solid momentum. And you just notice here that when the momentum turned positive right over here, this thing has been flying on the upside the whole way. So not only was the momentum signal great, but also the patterns have been bullish and fantastic, as you could see right here, but now extremely overbought. Canadian dollar, very similar. You could see that right here on this daily momentum. This one we haven't even updated yet, but this one is extreme overbought, as you could see right in there. And you could see the projection oscillator down here. That's that blue line, very overbought also. So that's looking like it's going to pull back. So there are so many things in here that look like they're overbought. It's going to enhance the fact that we think the dollar is going to rally this week, and all of these other currencies are going to pull back. So here's the intraday patterns, and you can see in here that on an intraday basis, they've all turned pretty positive. and been able to get a bid, but those daily patterns say that they are somewhat overbought or very overbought. Take a look at 6M. You could see that one, as that's been really powerful. We were bullish on that one. And take a look at 6A on an intraday basis, and you could see that strong also. So these currencies have been very strong. I just want to switch this over to 6M, that you could see that right here. That's it. So you could see it's been moving strongly on the upside right over here in the Mexican peso, and we were showing that we had this positive momentum going on. So a lot of interesting stuff in there. Basically, the sum of the evidence and what we see in the short-term information is that these currencies have just come too far, and the dollar is in a point on the short-term pattern. And I've got to tell you, it's lining up on the intermediate term pattern also, that there is a bottom coming in the dollar. Now, the major trend in the dollar is down, and we think it's down into, well, year end. So while we're looking for this bounce to come in the dollar, we're just going to call it a bounce because we think that the period just ahead of us, which might last for a couple of months, will be a better period for the dollar. We'll call it a month, 6 weeks, and then after that we think the dollar is in some trouble again. So in the meantime, we'll look for the dollar to bounce, these other currencies to pull back. We think there's some good short side trades for short-term aggressive traders in all of these other currencies while the dollar gets into this bouncing period. Now we're going to switch over to the gold market /GC. We were looking for a bounce for this week in gold. We thought it would get up to 1233 and then begin to roll over. Let's take a look at this chart here in gold. There are a lot of cycle patterns on here, so this is going to look messy. I'll try to explain this to you, and here is the gold pattern. So what we thought was gold was in a minor rising period. Now, where is that minor rising period? That is right in here. You could see this period right in there. Didn't mean to do that. Let's just get my pointer so you could see it. That's this period. See this gold cycle right in here pointing up? We thought it would bounce to 1233. It got up today to 1233. So it was a spot on bullseye call by us. Now, this pattern right over here is the silver pattern that you see right there. And this is the gold pattern and the GDX pattern. So all of that points to the fact that we think there's going to be a pullback in here. So we're going to call for a down week in gold and a down week in silver. So we're going to look for gold to pull back one more time in here to around, we'll call it 1210, 1205, maybe even 1200, back where these lows were. So 1205 is kind of the middle of that right in there. So we're going to call it a down week and then probably setting up another bouncing period after that. But this week really sets up as a pullback week. Take a look at gold here, and this is a bad pattern. What makes it really bad is that you see the negative momentum right in here, and you see it coming up right to the center of the slim ribbon on negative momentum and getting overbought at the same time. When you get that, the probability is very high that you're going to get more on the downside. Now, if I show you a period here where it got oversold in the green, the probability was high for another rally, and you could see that. Oversold in the green, the probability high for another rally, and you can see that. Here we are over, I'm sorry, these were oversold. This is overbought, right, in the red, and that says we're going to head lower in there. I can show you the same thing setting up here in the silver market, which is even weaker. You see it didn't quite get up to the center of the slim ribbon and overbought. So that says to me silver going to pull down again. So here is that silver pattern, and you could see right in here what we said for the week was that we thought it would bounce, and our bouncing area that we thought it was going to come to was 1590. This right over here is 1606, so it got up a little bit further than we thought. This first bounce here was around 16, so it did a little better, but you could see it pulling back already. So this is a slightly shorter period of time than gold is. It's a little off on that. We think that, you know, it's not going to get anywhere that near the flash crash lows, but 1540, 1545, it could give up 50 cents here on the downside in the next week. So we're going to look for that declining pattern there in the silver market. When I switch over here, you could see gold and silver. They've been really negative on the short term and choppy. It's very clear that you could see in here that platinum is stronger and copper is stronger. So if you were, a pairs trader and looking for what was stronger, what was weaker, you'd want to be long platinum and short silver based on what you're seeing in there. Now you could see copper is pretty strong. Now copper is much, much better than the rest of the group in there. And when I switch over to this copper pattern right in here, that's our short-term pattern. What you could see in here is that, it's above this support zone. It's got about a week of potential pullback in here, but then we think it's going to spike up again, and you could see this upward trend going right in here. As you had a downtrend going right in here, you could see the cycle showing you lower lows, lower lows. Now it's higher lows and higher highs, so there's going to be a good buy zone coming in here in about a week. If we're right about the metals pulling back, copper is going to give us a nice buying opportunity coming up in there. You could see copper in here as it's been positive momentum and been moving up. So that's a look at copper and a look at the metals. And basically we're looking for a down week coming up in metals, and that coincides with the inversely correlated patterns that we see normally between the metals and the dollar, which we think is going to have an up week in the coming week. So that is a look at the metals. Now we're going to switch over and we're going to look at the bond market. We have believed on an intermediate basis that the bond market has resumed its bear market. How do you like that? That it has turned negative, and we were just simply in a period of bounce over these months, and now we've had a breakdown in that. So on an intermediate basis, we are negative. Now we're going to look now at the intraday on the bonds. Where did that go? I got to look for that. Okay, well, it looks like I lost that right in here. All right, well, I don't have the intraday on those. Well, I'll do that in the next time. I do have the bond market as far as the short-term pattern, so I can't make those comparisons for you right now on the intraday patterns. /ZN is the first one we're going to look at in here. And I'll put that up for you, and this is the ZN pattern. So we've had a cyclical breakdown, and now we're getting a bounce. So what we projected for this week was that we were going to get a bounce in the 10-year to about 125.23 into this zone right here. It got up a little past it in here today on some of this news about the really weak inflation number and retail sales, but then you see it pulled back out of there. So it got a little bit beyond what we were looking for. We're going to call a down week, and we actually put in a negative setup in the treasuries for our members. If you become a member, and you can see that we posted that, we're expecting a down week in the bond market in here. So we expected an up week, and we got it. Now we're expecting a pullback in this cyclical pattern right over here, and that's probably going to get us back down near testing those lows. We're going to look for about 125 in the ZNs, and when I switch this over to the ZBs, we were looking for a bounce in the ZBs up during this week into this resistance zone. We thought that it would get up to around 153.20. The high for the week is 153.16, so we almost bullseyed that one. You see, it's right there. We put in, as I said, once it approached this today, we put in a short setup in there, and now we think it's going to be a down week. Now, look how much closer it got to the low here than the ZNs did. That's because we're getting a steepening of the yield curve. Now, why are we getting a steepening of the yield curve? It's because the dovish Fed is saying that, well, maybe there's not a lot more to go. And that is changing the tune in here. So while these things are still negative and we think there's going to be a pullback, we think that the decline will be more severe in the ZBs than the ZNs this week on this steepening of this yield curve. Let's take a look here at this ZB. You could see right there, it's gotten overbought below the slim ribbon in the red. That says high probability pullback. When you look at that, when I look in here at the ZNs, you can see in here the same thing. It got a little bit higher. That's because of the steepening yield curve, but still overbought and very likely to get a pullback. So that is a look at the bond market with a following the pattern nicely and looking like it's going to be moving to the downside in the coming week. So now, as much as I would love to skip this, we're going to look at the stock market. So last week, what I said was that I thought that the stock market would fall into sometime around midweek and then move up. I did not, though that's what I thought the pattern was. Like I said, I had no sense that the stock market was going to move back up to the high and then surge to a new high as far as the S&P 500 goes. So the S&P 500 right now is turning into the strongest index. It is right now trading right around 2460. Now, 2460 is an important number, and so is 2470. I'm actually going to show you that. The next one above that on the intermediate patterns is 2483. Man, I don't think it's going there. So where we are right now is at an important level. And here is that S&P 500 chart right there on the short-term basis. So we have a repeating cyclical rhythm in here that I want you to see. And it's been very consistent and very clear. Now, the principle of variation allows for, it's on like an average of 18 days plus or minus 2 days. So you can see in here there's a 20-day and a 16-day and a 20-day and a 16-day, and this was about an 18-day right over here. So these are your cycle patterns that you could see right in there. This low right in here was due around midweek last week, and there it came. But there's no way that I expected it to be an interday panic right in here on those comments of that Trump Jr. had brought out those emails. We thought that the pattern was going to look different. We thought that the pattern was going to look like this, that it would come down further into this support area here. It missed it by about 12 points from where we thought it was going to go. Then it would rally in this period here, and then it would turn over, and in this period of extreme risk, turn down in a big way. However, we had no idea that it was going to take the pattern and that in this rally period here was going to have so much energy that it was going to move up into those fib extension zones and make a new high. So now that it's happened, we've got to take the new data and say, okay, where are we? Well, still the intermediate patterns are calling for weakness coming into late August, early September. So that says to me that when this impulse on the upside is over with, it's going to roll over and get into that next period of extreme risk out here. So what that looks like for the next week is that this declining period takes over, and we think it fails in this resistance zone between the 2460 and 2470 extensions, and then pulls down for the week. We're going to call for a down week. It could get as low as around 2440 is where this rising support is right now. 2442 as this now moves up. So right in that area, and then after that get another bounce. So that follows this, and then we get into that period of a ton of risk in there. So that period of risk now in this, to see the period of risk was here, and it didn't give you much. 2% on the downside is nothing. So we're going to get to that back over here, but that doesn't begin again until this period right over here. So that's as far as the date of that goes, that comes out to, let me just see. We'll call it around the third week of July, 7/26 or so. So down, up, and then big down is the way we see it. We're going to call the next week down, test that area, somewhere between 2440, 2445. We'll call it an average of about 2442, and not be able to really stay down because of this right in here. So we're going to just look for that minor pullback. We got it wrong in the last week, that's for sure. Now, when you look at the at this now having turned up, it's extremely overbought. So that's part of why we think we're going to get that pullback in there. Now, the other indexes are just not quite as strong, but still strong. Here you can see the NASDAQ in here, and it had actually turned a negative, and now it's peaking up into some positive momentum. And we think that it's going to, have a pullback, as it's also extremely overbought. The Russell, which was really choppy and also is very overbought, all that points to a pullback in the next week. When I look at the intraday comparisons on the stock market, you can see they're all positive, and on an intraday basis, they're all almost equally positive. So hard to make a call there of which is stronger than the other. They're all moving up in a very strong way. As you can see, if I just take a closer look in here, they're all going to look pretty similar right there. So a much stronger look to the market, and a surprise to me that they are all that strong, and hard to argue with the fact that they moved up to a new high, and that it's a buying panic right now. So pattern I got right in the S&P 500. It's not worth anything, right? Because you never had a chance to buy them, and they just stormed their way up on the upside. We'll take a look at the VIX in here. Now, the VIX pattern is suggestive of the fact that the market's going to move down in the next week. And when I look at the daily pattern in the VIX, you'll see that it points to a bounce coming in the next week. And here is that pattern right there. So there's the VIX, and it's coming down to where we have these nested bottoms right over here. We have a 9.7 VIX again, and every time we get under 10, you get a bouncing period in there. It might take a couple days, as you could see, but we're going to look for the VIX to get a bounce. Probably, over 11, maybe 12, and then remember, we're in that period where we're going to be probably choppy before we make the market high. So we think it's going to be likely that the VIX pop will be short-lived based on what we're seeing in these stock market patterns right now. So it looks to us like the stock market will have a pullback over the coming week. We'll look for SPX somewhere between 2440, 2445. That's the short-term view for this week. I hope you loved it. And like I said, a lot of people seeing it for the first time. So send us your comments. That's it. So if you want to get our short-term view as you just saw it, all you have to do is become a member. I can give you a special link to become a level 3 member, where you get all of our rankings and trade setups, and that video and 8 other categories of member videos for half price for a full month. You could try everything out. I think you'll love it. And don't forget that we're going to be offering a special. If you want to get on the waiting list to be able to get our charts on the 80 best traded symbols, write me, slim at askSlim.com, for either of those specials.
I'm going to the city and I'm going to do a steady show.